Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Full Pour. I'm Erin James, and I am here broadcasting in my friend's office. Again, always bringing you real life here at Sip Magazine. We're excited to have you join us today because we're doing something that is near and dear to my heart. We are tasting or drinking, who am I kidding, wines from the Burgundy region of France. And it's just can be such a mystery, and it shouldn't be. So we have Jackson Rohrbaugh here. He is a master sommelier and owner of Country Red Fruit in Seattle, and he is going to get us all caught up on Burgundy, why we shouldn't be afraid of it, why we should drink more of it, and how to do so on a budget, keeping in mind that not everybody's rolling in it right now. So I'm going to bring on Jackson here to talk about Burgundy. Hi, Jackson. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. And so you were broadcasting today from a lesser-known Seattle restaurant, small place.
People might recognize this view. This is canvas. So yeah, I got Lake Union out in front of me. Kind of nice, beautiful canvas view. Kind of what it is. So you can see Gasworks Parks in the distance there.
And the SIP headquarters are just behind that too. So let's start with a little bit about you. You've hosted for us once before, but in case people missed that, this is where you cut your teeth on wine, right? At campus.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit.
I started here in 2008 and worked here for 10 years, and there was a period where I left to go up in another restaurant, but really about 10 years straight here. And learned so much here. I started here, I was still in college. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. But after years spent learning to be a server and bartender, I kind of got interested in wine, started working on the wine team. They let me come and work the cellar, which is always super fun. And I think I just got, at some point, totally enraptured by the magic of wine. I just wanted to learn everything there was to know about it, and just kind of wanted to live that life. And so that's what brought me here. That's what kept me here for so long. And I still have a really great relationship with these guys, and come by and hang out every once in a while. And if I need a place to broadcast, sometimes I tap someone on the shoulder, and yeah.
Well, it's definitely not a bad place to be. So we're here to talk today about Burgundy. If you're not familiar, this is a famous wine region in France. That's all I'm going to go into detail, and I'm going to let you take it from there. But kind of our main premise today is just to learn about the region and learn to not be afraid of the region. So we're going to debunk some myths and mysteries, and talk about what makes Burgundy so great. So let's start with a little bit of Burgundy 101.
So Burgundy is a region in France, in eastern France. It's about a 2.5 hour-ish, depending on what part of Burgundy you go to, train ride from Paris. So you can take the TGV or the TGV down from Paris to Burgundy, and it starts in the city of Dijon in the north and goes to the city of Lyon in the south. And it's kind of partly the French cultural heartland when it comes to French food, French cuisine, those sort of picturesque rolling green hills with farmhouses and livestock and vineyards on the hills. Burgundy really looks like that storybook, beautiful version of France in its own special way. And Burgundy is really one of the places where the soul of the world of wine is located. And a lot of people all over the world who make wine draw inspiration from Burgundy. And it's one of those places that is pure in a lot of ways. This is about farmers who harvest grapes and make wine. And they don't have, these are not about big factory farms or huge winemaking operations that are multinational brands with marketing budgets. I mean, we're talking about 2 or 3 people working for each estate, and they harvest their grapes. Maybe they have some seasonal labor come in to help with harvest, but then they make wine from their small family vineyards. And you are tasting the work of just a couple sets of hands in each bottle of Burgundy that you open, and that's part of what makes it unique and magical, and kind of keeps you coming back. If you're new to wine and new to Burgundy, it's a place that has a lot of interest and intrigue and mystique, and it can take a long time to learn about it, but there's lots of fun entry points to it all along the way.
So what about, let's talk about main grape varieties, and this is something that here in the Pacific Northwest we are pretty familiar with, since a lot of them are grown throughout the Northwest, but heavily in Oregon and also in British Columbia.
Yeah, when we talk about red Burgundy, we're talking about Pinot Noir. When we talk about white Burgundy, we're talking about Chardonnay. And a lot of people who cut their teeth on Chardonnay, let's say back in the 80s or 90s, maybe we're drinking some sweeter, very ripe California Chardonnays, and so people think they don't like Chardonnay. But really, white Burgundy, as it's made in the region of Burgundy, France, is not a big, oaky, over-the-top wine. It's an elegant, pretty, very food-friendly wine. Same thing with the Pinot Noir. These are not Pinot Noirs that taste like Coca-Cola and cherry jam. These are Pinot Noirs that are really meant to go with food. They're crunchy, they're bright, they have lots of zippiness to them, and they're really perfect food wines, especially for this time of year as it starts getting cold out. So really, Pinot Noir and Chardonnay are the two main grape varieties of Burgundy, and there are some other ones too, but that's what we really are talking about for the most part.
So keeping in mind the local connection that we have here, and with, again, Oregon being a big area that grows both Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, what is it that it allows, or what similarities do Oregon and Burgundy have? And then what is it that allows Oregon to grow it beautifully as well?
It's a great question. Pinot Noir is a grape that's very difficult to get right in the vineyard. So if you have a place that's too cold, sometimes the Pinot Noir won't ripen correctly. And if you have a place that's too hot, sometimes Pinot Noir will just sunburn. It's a thin-skinned grape, so it's very subject to a lot of things that other grapes might make it out of okay, whether that's rot or mildew or excessive sunshine or heat. Pinot Noir is a pretty delicate type of grape, and it does take a lot of coaxing, and it does take a very temperate, very balanced climate to come out in a really nice, balanced way in the final product. You're risking all sorts of things if you have a very humid climate, or if you have a very hot climate. Pinot Noir is very difficult to get right in those places. So oftentimes, whether that's Burgundy, which is kind of a cool climate, but it has some gentler temperatures during the growing season, that's a good place for Pinot Noir. Oregon is similar. Oregon is not Eastern Washington or Eastern California or Nevada. Out towards the coast, you have a lot of wind, you have a lot of precipitation. It's a little bit cooler there. Pinot Noir likes that. Pinot Noir likes to be challenged a little bit. So Chardonnay kind of grows like a weed anywhere you plant it, but very good Chardonnay is hard to come by, and you're looking for those balanced and gentle climates when you want to have really world-class great Chardonnay.
So I'm drinking some Chardonnay. I stood in the wine section at Metropolitan Market and stared for a long time, debating between like $1 to $2 difference price points on which Burgundy and Chardonnay I was going to get, or white Burgundy I was going to get. And I settled on this guy, Domaine Telmar, the Macon Chardonnay.
Super tasty.
I think it was like $17.
Yeah.
It's like it's perfectly full and crisp all at once, and I have a really good temperature on it right now, which made it kind of perfect too. But yeah, this hit the spot.
I love that wine. I've had that wine. I used to, when I worked at a retail shop, I used to sell a lot of that wine. It's just so easy, no-brainer type of wine. It's delicious, and great example of white Burgundy. So.
Yeah, and so you have 4 delicious wines that are brought in by 2 Seattle area importers and distributed throughout the Seattle area, possibly in Portland. But we'd love to see what you're tasting too.
Absolutely. So our friend William Woodruff at Chloe Imports, who imports a lot of Burgundies himself has great personal relationships with these farmers that we're talking about. We reached out to William, and he provided a wine that I'm very familiar with that I love. This is a Bourgogne Haute Côte de Beaune Blanc. And if you look at that word right there, the Côte de Beaune is kind of the middle, it's in the northern part of Burgundy in the Côte d'Or, and it's the southern part of that section, and it's where some of the greatest white wines in Burgundy come from. So they talk
to
about
clarify, Côte de Beaune is the region, the sub-region, right?
Yeah, it's a sub-region, Côte de Beaune. And that's where, we have Meursault and Pouligny-Montrachet, the great white wine villages that produce Burgundy. And this is from a producer named Capitaine Gagnon, and this is Les Gueulottes Haute Côte de Beaune Blanc. So just a really affordable and delicious. I think this would hit the shelf for like 25 or so. And it's from really killer vineyards that are kind of dispersed around that area of France. And I think this wine's absolutely delicious. It's meant to drink a little younger. You don't have to sit it down for 10 years to have it be enjoyable. And I love how approachable this wine is. Chardonnay, 100%.
So can you show us the label one more time? And then maybe if there's I don't know if there's a general way to do a walkthrough of identifying what is what on a French wine label, but if maybe you could point out what exactly people should be looking for.
Yep. So if we look closer here, it says 2018 here. That's the vintage. And then if we go down a little bit, we go to the region. And they're not always at the same exact location on every bottle, but you can definitely find this information on any bottle of Burgundy. So Bourgogne is the French word for Burgundy, so that's the region that this wine comes from. And then we're looking at the sub-region, the Haute Côte de Beaune, and that is a smaller area within the region of Burgundy. So it's like a bullseye. This is the big round part of the target, and then we get closer to the bullseye, Haute Côte de Beaune, that's the sort of inner ring of the target. And then we go to a single cuvée name, or sometimes it's a vineyard name, and this is called Les Gueulottes. And that is the name of, oftentimes when you get down to that sort of place name, that's a lieu-dit, or that's sometimes just a single little parcel of vines that they choose to make this bottling from. And then the producer is down at the end here, Capitaine Gagnon. And oftentimes in the Burgundy region, the producers put their name in small print or a little bit lower in the label. They're not, it's a very Burgundian thing not to be showy and flashy and, all about yourself and telling other people how great you are. Whereas like Bordeaux labels, it's like Chateau blank. It's like, boom, the Chateau is the only most important thing on the label. And then they put the region name like Grand Vin de Bordeaux, very small. It's a little bit of an insight into the psyche of the region as a whole, because Bordeaux is kind of all about the glitz and glamour and like, look how much money we have. Burgundy's kind of like, we're very understated. We make wine. We're humble farmers. Here you go. We hope you like it. And yeah, that's not a hard and fast rule for every single person making wine in those places, but it's a little bit the attitude you get when you go to those separate wine regions. So,
I love that description, the bullseye of kind of zeroing in on the specifics. That's a really good, not all labels fall out that way, but that's a good rule of thumb of kind of trying to figure it out, because I think probably what is the most baffling part of shopping for a French wine period is deciphering what exactly is going on in the label and what you're buying, other than, if you're at QFC and it says Cabernet, then you're like, okay, cool. But realistically, it's probably like 68% Cabernet and then a lot of other stuff in it too. So I think a lot of people, and our viewers, if you're watching, you want to chime in here with any questions on how to assess a wine label, but I think that's a really helpful way to look at it. So any other hot tips on how to find budget Burgundy or affordable Burgundy? And and that could be, we said we're aiming for one for $30 or less, but
yeah,
40 or less is still affordable Burgundy.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it is worth learning a little bit about it, because you learn why certain things are more expensive, but then you find out that there's a wine that's grown next door to that guy who has this $70 to $5 bottle of white. You learn that this guy next door has a really killer bottle of white. He's growing it. The vineyards are literally a stone's throw, and Burgundy is small. Like, these are places that were the greatest vineyards in the world. Most of them are smaller than a soccer field. which in the world of wine production really doesn't produce you that much quantity. And you're looking at a vineyard that might be like 3 rows over or across a tiny little road, and the guy over there charges, $35 for his really killer bottle of red Burgundy, and the guy on the side you're standing on charges $95 a bottle. And it's crazy, it's mind-boggling, it's baffling, and there's a whole reason and a history why that is. We're not going to really go into the super nerdy level of that, but it is worth learning a little bit about why these regions are the way they are, because it teaches you that you can find that next door neighbor to the wine you want, and oftentimes get a really delicious wine for a little bit more affordable. When I'm shopping for Burgundy and I want to find something cheap, I mean, Chablis, we don't have one open on the table, but Chablis is a great way to drink cheap white Burgundy. It's just a little bit more affordable than the stuff grown further south in the Côte d'Or. And also, it's what you have. You have a Macon wine, and I have a Macon white that I might as well get it open. I mean, what the heck?
Yeah. Well, it's always hard to show label on this because it's mirror image.
Yeah. So this is also a Macon. You can see it on Aaron's bottle. And This is Nicolas Maya, and this is a Macon Versé. So Macon is, if you start at the top of Burgundy and you drive south towards Lyon, the Macon is further south in Burgundy. It's a region that grows pretty much only white wine. And they make wonderful, super delicious examples of Chardonnay. They make some high-end ones, but they make a lot of really nice mid-range ones that might be on a retail shelf for $15, $18, $25 for really killer wines. And a lot of the talent, because the land in Burgundy itself is so expensive, a lot of the most talented winemakers are going and buying land in either the Macon or in Beaujolais further south, because that's what they can afford. Because you're talking about it's right up there with like Napa Valley or Piedmont, some of the most expensive vineyard land in the world. I mean, you're paying millions of dollars for a single acre of some of this land, and so it's prohibitive for brand new, young, aspiring, super talented winemakers to go buy land in the Côte d'Or, in the very finest part of Burgundy. So they're making really, really good wines in the Macon right now because there's so much talent flowing down into it.
Wait, they're actually not allowed to? They're actually prohibited?
What?
To make wine in that region if they're new?
They're not prohibited. It's cost prohibitive,
Oh, okay. I was like, are they actually not allowed?
They're not. It's not illegal, no. And you do get some younger, newer winemakers making wine in the main part of Burgundy in what we call the Côte d'Or, or the Golden Slope. But a lot of people can't because it's just too expensive. It's just way too much down there, and we're seeing a lot of producers go further south where the land is cheaper, and I think they're doing a really good job. So, we're gonna drink some Macon. This is Nicolas Maya. And again, I love the look of like young white Burgundy. It's got that really beautiful golden apple color. It's just brilliant.
Do you find as it ages, it gets more, is it darker, deeper color?
Yeah, it will. It depends. I mean, pretty much every white wine gets darker as it ages. Every red wine gets lighter as it ages. But these are wines that aren't meant to lay down for forever. I'm sure they'll be interesting with a few years of age on them, but they're so good now, and they're full of fresh fruit, and they're zippy and delicious and great with fish and great with snacks that you kind of don't really need to lay them down, if that makes sense.
So I can't remember what we ate, but for my wedding, my request was I wanted a single bottle of white Burgundy and a single bottle of red Burgundy to drink, and that was all I wanted. No, I didn't want to share it. Those are my 2 bottles for the entirety of my reception.
Yeah.
I think I ended up sharing a little bit, but I had our friend Jeff Lindsay Thorson score me some bottles from RN74 in Seattle, and I drank really good shit. And it was a perfect wedding reception for me. But white Burgundy is kind of like my happy place. Like I want to live inside of a glass of white Burgundy. I feel like it's probably doable.
If you're gonna splurge, I kind of like the splurge I like the splurge spend more on white Burgundy than I do on red Burgundy. I feel like sometimes it's really hard to find the red Burgundies that when you spend $150 a bottle, which is a lot of money to spend on a bottle of wine, I can't afford that usually. So I'm looking for wines that really deliver for the price. And when I spend $150 on a bottle of white Burgundy, and like that's a super special occasion bottle, right?
Yes.
Maybe one of those a year, but oh man, if that $150 white Burgundy doesn't deliver the goods, I mean, those are incredible wines for the money. Just a little age on them, Premier Cru, and they're so delicious. I want to give a couple tasting notes. So we talked about like the difference between, let's say, California Chardonnay, or even like a riper Oregon Chardonnay, and the difference between that and what Burgundy tastes like. Okay, so they're both made from Chardonnay, so the grape material is the same, but they're planted in different styles of vineyards, so there's going to be some flavor differences in the final product. When I think about California or Oregon Chardonnay, I think about riper fruit. I think about like ripe golden apple and pineapple, and sometimes some tropical like banana-y notes. So you ever like stick your nose in a glass of Cali Chard, and it's like, oh man, this smells like banana cream pie and pineapple and like mango. It's very exotic and ripe, and the flavors are so pronounced. I'll focus on California Chardonnay. Like I don't mind. I love it. But when I think about the difference between that and Burgundy, Burgundy is leaner. It's more tart. The fruit quality is a little more citrusy and bright, and that kind of lends it oftentimes more to food pairing, especially when you're pairing with really delicate dishes that you don't want to hammer with a big oaky wine, and you want something really refreshing and light. White Burgundy is where it's at. So.
I have a go-to. You and I were chatting yesterday about other things, but I have a go-to dish and pairing that I love. I like to make risotto with scallops and white Burgundy with that. It's like, because you need something that brings that acid. You need something that offers kind of complementary richness. You can complement and contrast all in the same wine and dish, and that's just like, kiss, like so good.
Cool. I love the constant game of pairing food and wine. It's part of why I do what I do. I love like seeking out that new flavor or trying out that new wine with that dish that you've never made it with before, and just really trying to get the synergy of the food and wine like working on the same level together. It's so much fun. That's like, it's my daily challenge. It's one of the things that professionally gets me up in the morning is to find really killer food and wine pairings. So
you have a couple of red wines for us as well.
Let's do it, yeah.
One's in a huge bottle, and one's in a normal bottle.
Let's go.
Yeah.
We're gonna do the Magnum first. And
awesome.
When I talked about what does it make, what it makes red Burgundy. Okay, red Burgundy most of the time is Pinot Noir, but politically France's divisions let another region. It's part of the Burgundy region, and it's further south, and it's called Beaujolais. And you've probably had, if you're listening, and you may have had some really great Beaujolais. You may have just had the cheap stuff that released around the holidays, right around Thanksgiving or right before Thanksgiving, called Beaujolais Nouveau, and that's like pink. Especially the cheapest versions of that are pink, kind of soda pop, touch of fizz, touch of sweetness to them. I mean, shoot, they're very tasty. You can slug them down. They're low alcohol. But that is not the finest example of the Beaujolais region or the Gamay grape. So we're not just talking about Pinot Noir now. We're talking about another grape called Gamay. And Gamay and Pinot are pretty similar. They both have a lot of red fruit qualities. They're both light-skinned grapes. The Gamay just tends to be a little more floral and a little more kind of chalky than Pinot Noir. And there's a lot of Gamays out there that are just fantastic, beautiful wines. And oftentimes the value is so good for the quality of wines you get if you go buy Beaujolais. And that can be Beaujolais, like we talked about the different regional appellations. That can be just Beaujolais or Shrinking the Bullseye Beaujolais Village or one of the Cru Beaujolais vineyards. And this is right outside that Beaujolais boundary in the Coteaux de Lyonnais, which is, when I say Coteaux Lyonnais, Lyonnais. So this is in the sort of region of the city of Lyon. And this is kind of the wine that you would drink in a cafe in Lyon. And Lyon is one of the centers of French gastronomy. So many great chefs have come out of Lyon and have restaurants there, and that's where a lot of the sort of French country cooking and the haute cuisine that a lot of these famous chefs brought out to the rest of the world espoused and brought out of Lyon. And so Beaujolais is very close to like the French country soul food. And if you ever heard like poulet de Bresse, that chicken, it's white chicken with like a red coxcomb and blue feet, and it's a very like picturesque, almost clip art chicken. That is the poulet de Bresse from Lyon, and it's a famous dish. And paired with Beaujolais, it's fantastic. So
the color on that wine is beautiful. Can you hold it up to the camera a little bit more?
Yeah, look at that. It's just so brilliant and so like cherry red and bright. It looks like a 50s Chevy like red. It's so brilliant.
I love that.
This is L'Astral, and this is a wine made by a guy named Jean-Baptiste Nérand. This is a little bit more of like a natural wine, a wine that's made with really like no intervention, no very little, if any, manipulation in the vineyard or winery. So these grapes are just like, it's just wine grapes. There's nothing else added. And there's a little bit more of a laissez-faire, like we're not going to touch it or mess with it or try to manipulate it too much during fermentation. We're just going to kind of let it be what it is. Sometimes the results are really good with a wine like this. Sometimes the results are a little, different, but it's all good. There's different schools of winemaking thought. So. Man.
I'm terribly jealous because I love me some Beaujolais. That was so good.
Sorry, I couldn't share with you. I'm going to have to drink this entire Magnum by myself.
I know, it's a huge bottle. So other than the classic, the classic chicken dish, what would you serve this with?
Gosh. Chicken is kind of the apotheosis of Gamay pairing. But what I've come to really enjoy it with is like roast vegetables of any kind. There's a sort of underlying sweet fruitiness in this wine, and it's not sweet. It's a dry wine, but the quality of fruit kind of has that resonant, like chewy, bright fruitiness. And when you take roasted vegetables, like let's say roasted carrots or turnips or parsnips, and you roast them at like a nice 400 or 450, they start to caramelize, and you're getting that sort of Maillard reaction in your cooking and in your vegetables, and just adding that sweetness of vegetable. I love that with Beaujolais. So any kind of roast vegetables with Beaujolais is so good, and it's a perfect fall dish. With the charcuterie platter, with salami, with prosciutto, this also works really well. What else? Oh, pizza. Beaujolais pizza is killer. And I'm curious if you want to take a stab at why I think that's such a killer pairing.
Probably for the same reason as a charcuterie board. It's please meat.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that I think Beaujolais can rival the tomato vegetable qualities of a red sauce base.
Totally. Yeah, that red sauce is that acidity, right? It's you have a pizza, tons of rich cheese, whether that's mozzarella or whatever you got, or if you got charcuterie and pepperoni and salami on top of your pizza, all those are kind of fatty, rich things. And Beaujolais is a really high acid wine, and so that acid and the fattiness play on your palate, and it makes it such a yummy pairing. Same reason that like Coke and pizza go well together, right?
Right.
Coke's super high acid. Coke's like higher acid than any wine out there. But when you have like a wine with like zippy acidity like this Beaujolais, I think about that with any kind of rich, flatbreads, pizzas. It's so good.
So I like to do, this is a total nostalgia pairing for me, but I don't know if it necessarily pairs well. But in Seattle, there's a wine bar that hasn't, I don't believe they've reopened yet, called Lake Avis. And this is, I know you know this, I'm telling other people.
They gotta know about it.
He does a paper wrapped whitefish, and it's usually just kind of basic whitefish, like, I don't know, raw fish or something. And just wraps it in paper, cooks it in butter and herbs, and he always has a magnum of Beaujolais that he's pouring, whatever it is. It's always some delicious wine that gets a great deal on. And that is just such a nostalgic pairing for me, is paper wrapped fish and Beaujolais.
Oh,
and
so good.
and this last year on Beaujolais Day, My husband was gone, and it was my baby and I put him to bed, and I was just like, all right, I'm having a Beaujolais day by myself, and I made paper wrap fish. Takes 10 minutes to do, and by then half the bottle was gone, and it was great.
That's awesome.
But I think the same thing though, like the fish has that kind of like medium tone, middle of the road fattiness to it, and the Beaujolais offers enough acid, but then like enough fruit to kind of bounce off those herbs, and it's just it's a good thing.
Yeah, and there's so few red wines that really are delicious with fish, but Beaujolais is low tannin, so it doesn't have tons of grip and fuzziness and kind of all the things that make a big tannic red wine good with steak, all the texture and tannin and all the grip. It doesn't really have a lot of tannin, and it has great acidity, and it's really refreshing. It's not a super heavy or cloying wine, so really Beaujolais is fantastic with fish. I love it with simple fish dishes. They kind of match a little bit on the level of fattiness and weight, and it's a sneaky good pairing for sure. Smoked fish too, like smoked salmon and Beaujolais, killer.
I think a lot of Burgundy goes well with salmon in particular. Yeah. That's what you need. I mean, it's such a typical, I guess, pairing would be salmon and Pinot Noir, especially here in the Northwest. So,
oh yeah, classic pairing.
Yeah, but for all the same reasons and for good reasons. So
I couldn't dump that one out. That was like
okay. Well, one more for you guys.
This that Macon that we drank earlier. So this guy, this Macon Verger that we drank earlier, and this Jean-Baptiste Neyron's L'Astral. Those are both imported by our friend Eric Swickard, who runs Vin to You Importing. I've carried a lot of his wines at Country Red Fruit. We've carried a lot of them at Canlis from before. When I worked at McCarthy and Shearing, we carried a lot of Eric's wines, and Williams too. But he specializes in small family vineyards that work organically and really are hands-off in the winemaking process. So I just love the book he has and the wines he has. This Astral is like a perfect example of the type of wine he carries. Very food-friendly wines. So check them out. And then this last one we're going to do is a traditional red Burgundy. So we're talking now about Pinot Noir, Savigny-les-Beaunes. So very close to where this first white was from, this Capitaine Gagnero. This is in the Côte de Beaune, so further north than Beaujolais or the Macon. And this is a great Pinot Noir coming from Domaine de Pouilloret. And I'm moving from Gamay, Beaujolais, to a classic Burgundy Pinot Noir. So what am I expecting to taste? For one, the fruit's a little more serious. It's not that cheerful, like almost candied, bright red cherry and strawberry fruit. We kind of going from a candied level fruit down to like a very fresh and just ripe cherry and cranberry and strawberry, not really in the candied way that the Beaujolais presents. And then we're looking for a little more of that herbal quality, that rosemary and sage, and we're looking for that earthiness, that turned earth forest floor character, or mushroom. Those are things that I expect out of a bottle of red Burgundy.
So we had a question.
Wow, that smells like Burgundy. Wow. Right there.
So while you're tasting, we had a question. I don't know if it's hard to pinpoint, but where would you recommend buying affordable Burgundy? And you can speak to Seattle, since I don't expect to know wine shops in Portland as well. But where would you recommend?
In Seattle, McCarthy and Shearing would be my first choice. I think, those guys get Burgundy. They were, Jay and Dan, who run McCarthy and Shearing, were some of the first people to ever bring certain Burgundy producers into the U.S., and they make fantastic selections, and everything on the shelf is curated very tightly. So I can't say enough good things about the selection there. They're doing curbside pickup right now, but it sounds like things have been doing well for them in COVID times. You also have over on Capitol Hill, you have EVS, or European Vine Selections. It's a great one, and then also Left Bank in South Park.
I love
really cool, yeah, has really cool Burgundy. I'm actually looking for a space for country red fruit and hoping to get one in South Park myself. So fingers crossed that goes through.
I got a few of the ladies at Petite Souef, Beacon Hill, also in my neighborhood. And then why am I blanking on their Fremont spot?
There's also Bottle House in Magnolia, or
Yeah.
not Magnolia, but Madison, and they do a great job.
I also think that, I mean, outside of a bottle shop, if you want to go to a higher end-ish grocery store, the Nut Markets, the New Seasons, the Central Markets, the Thriftways, those are all local grocers that they have a full-time wine steward who handpicks on the shelf, and a lot of those guys help you pinpoint based on price.
Central markets, so like Ballard Market and the Town and Country Market up on Sullivan, and like the one that's in Bainbridge. Those guys have killer wine selection. I've always found fun stuff there. So, yeah.
And I think both of these are with distributors that if you special requested any of these 4 wines from your wine steward, they should be able to bring it in a reasonable amount of time, which is I think it's like a week-ish. So
for sure.
So back to before we wrap up, because I see what time it is, and football starts soon. So let's talk a little bit more about the wine that you're drinking. So you said it's classic red Burgundy.
Yeah. So this is Domaine de Prieuré, Moutier Gamay, and this comes from the village of Savigny-les-Bains. And we already had one that's like a regional appellation. So this is Bourgogne. You can see it says Bourgogne, Haute-Côte-de-Nuit. And then if you shrink the bullseye just like one tick, you go to village level wines, which are, now you're talking about a specific little town in Burgundy. And some of these towns have like 4 buildings. Some of them are like Beaune, the village of Beaune is a city, and there's hotels and restaurants and lots of shops you can walk in. Really killer place to drink wine and eat food. Oh my God. But we're talking now about a village level wine. So that means it's a shrunk geographical area, and usually, especially in the case of a village like Savigny-les-Bains, you have really great hillsides that are all around the village, and they make fantastic wine in these places. So we've kind of gone more geographically specific, and that means a little bit higher quality usually. So,
what are you tasting in this wine?
For me, a little bit of what I said earlier. It just really presents as classic red Burgundy. And when I think classic red Burgundy, I think the fruit can't be super ripe. If I pull a Russian River Valley Pinot Noir next to this, I love Russian River Valley Pinot, William Sellium or Costa Brown or Kistler, fantastic Pinot Noirs, but they're very ripe. They're rich, luscious, ripe fruit that sometimes borders on like cooked fruit. And that's a really yummy type of Pinot Noir to drink. But this is underripe. This is tart cranberry and cherry and this sort of like crispy, like palate stinging tartness of red fruit. And on its own, that's maybe not as much of a like gulpable, delicious, big chunky red wine as you might have in like a Russian River or Oregon Pinot Noir. But something about that tartness and that zippiness when it comes to Burgundy makes it such a good food wine. So that's what's valuable about Burgundy is that underripeness is, people eat sour food, we eat Sour Patch Kids and Now and Laters and things that have a really high, and we drink Coke, has a lot of acid in it, right? So Burgundy is kind of like hits that sour note in your sort of taste profile in your brain. It's a pleasant sourness, a pleasant tartness that kind of keeps you coming back for more because it excites your palate, and like that acid makes your salivary glands response. I'm not trying to get too geeky here, but that's what makes it delicious, the zippiness and the acid. So
I am so hungry now.
Yeah, I know. I want to eat some food right now.
I know. Well, we won't keep you for much longer, but I want you to give a little elevator pitch on Country Red Fruit and tell us about what you're doing in closing.
Country Red Fruit is a company that I started. I started it this year. We're based in Seattle. We are basically a wine club. So we send out a couple different types of memberships, but mostly is the main membership We send out 6 bottles every 2 months. It's $189 including shipping. And to me, Country Red Fruit was my way to say, hey, I want to be I love being a sommelier. I love working on the floor here at Canlis, and I love bringing people things that I'm excited about and telling them about it and having a dialogue and seeing what they like to drink and listening to them and bringing some fun things. But I can't work restaurant nights with 2 small kids, and I want to find a way to do what I do as a sommelier, but make it something that gets delivered to your door. And so Country Red Fruit delivers 6 bottles every 2 months, but that's not where the conversation ends. Because if you think about traditional wine retail, whether you go to a grocery store or wine shop, it's often like, here's your bottle, now get out. And I kind of, it always frustrated me, like watching what traditional wine retail looks like. And so I said, hey, I want to show you, I want to give you the wine, and that's going to be part of it. But also I'm going to give you ideas of what you can eat with this and recipes to help you actually make it yourself. I want to give you music pairings. Obviously, not everyone's going to have the same exact taste of music as I do, but hey, here's some fun stuff. I listen to tons and tons of different types of music. So every wine I release has a music pairing. It has at least one recipe pairing with a printed recipe that comes in the box, and just general information. And every wine has a video. So when I release a box, every one of the 6 wines has a video corresponding to it where I teach about that wine, talk about it, give you some background information so you can enjoy it more. Because I find that with so much about wine drinking is not necessarily just the wine itself. It's what do you know about it? And those things that you learn about the wine and those things that you can engage with actually make the wine taste better. It is weird as that sounds. Really, that's why I do what I do, is because the knowledge of where this wine comes from and who made it and why it's unique and why it's special and different, that's what makes the wine taste better to you. And it's not just empirical, this amount of fruit and this amount of sugar and this amount of acid that makes a wine taste good. It's the things that are going on in here while you taste wine that make that wine special. So that's why I wanted to do Country Red Fruit, is bring context and keep people kind of engaged into the conversation about the wine, not just here's your wine, get out, you know?
Well, that's why you spend a ton of money at winery tasting rooms, because you fully engulf yourself in the experience and the story, and you walk out with a 6-pack, and you're like, what just happened?
Yeah, totally.
But it's great to have a hand selected by you, so it's pretty exciting. So I'll run the ticker again, countryredfruit.com. Sign up today, obviously.
Yeah, one more thing. I'm at Canlis right now, so we've done like 4 releases so far where I've picked all the wines, and then a couple of them I've asked chefs to contribute recipes. So I had like Ashley Rodriguez, who's a great Pacific Northwest chef, and Sarah Adler were both chefs featured on our last 2 boxes. With this one, I asked for another somm to help. So I asked Nelson DeKip to be my guest sommelier. He's the wine director at Canlis and has been the wine director for 15 years. And he's one of my great friends and great mentors. And I asked him to pick all the wines in the next box, which is about to be released next week, our September box. And he's of Filipino descent. And so I asked a chef, Melissa Miranda, she's a chef of Musang. She is the featured chef on this box. So we have a Filipino somm and a Filipino chef doing all the wines and all the recipes in this next Country Red Fruit box. And I am so excited about the food that got paired with these wines and the wines themselves. It's so cool. So I would love to have you on board if you're on the fence about joining a wine club. Like, join Country Red Fruit and get it for this month. See what you think. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. We got the whole Filipino Pride thing happening this month, and I'm super stoked for it. So.
Well, I want to sign up because I'm a big Nelson fan, and I live in Beacon Hill, and I still haven't been to Musang, so probably going to have to join. Well, Jackson, thank you so much today, and for hand selecting these incredible wines. Again, these were budget Burgundies, and I think all of them retail for under $30, and worked with 2 local importers to bring them to you guys. So if you're in Seattle, they should be easy-ish to find. If not, you can special request them. But we're, as always, it was a pleasure to have you. We love having you here, Jackson. And we'll probably have you on soon again for tiki cocktails.
Let's do it. I'm all about the tiki. You know it.
I know.
I've got my like floral print pocket on today, so you know.
So you're ready.
Got a floss a little tiki at all times.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jackson.
Thanks for having me.
Wait. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. I'm starving. I don't know about you, but also get excited because all this talking about pairing, we've got a new digital issue coming your way in just a couple of weeks where we have our favorite pairing recipes from expert chefs, from in-house chefs, as in I have a recipe in there that we are so excited to share with you. All of them seasonally appropriate, all of them paired with local beverages, and all about making sure that you are connecting your food with your drink the way it should be. So look for that. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter for all that news, and then sign up for our newsletter at sipmagazine.com to stay in the know about all things sippable. All right, I'm Erin James. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, and go find some Burgundy. Cheers.